Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. We're living in a pretty turbulent time, especially when it comes down to Russian invasion of Ukraine. There's a lot of discussions about possible negotiations, end of the war, and so on. But I want to start today by not telling what I think, but rather read you the words of the person that is much better than me. It's a commander of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Corps, Azov, Denis Prokopenko, or also known as Redis. And he says, "It has always been this way. Only the brave are respected, only the influential are listened to, and only the strong are considered important. Since 1991, Ukraine's enemies have done everything in their power to make our country weak, fragmented, toothless, and dependent. In 2013, Ukraine began to awaken and build its muscles, finally recognizing its need to assert its agency. It would be naive to assume that building this agency would be painless, and expecting someone else to pave the way to this goal would be an even greater mistake. For 11 years, we have relied on half measures to fight a war against a country with an advantage in population and resources. Moreover, for 3 years, Ukraine has endured a full-scale invasion by one of the world's most combat-effective military forces. The daily feats of Ukrainian soldiers should inspire us and prevent us from despairing, despite any statements made by foreign politicians, analysts, and experts. The front line should always have the last word. Of course, we have not succeeded in every area, and much work remains ahead. Indeed, we put our trust in empty promises and gave away our nuclear weapons, critically weakening the country's defensive capabilities. However, Ukraine has already achieved the impossible. Ukraine's resistance to Russian occupation, the courage and strength of its military, our strong horizontal public relations, and our diplomats' skills have already secured a place in history for our country. This is where the real Ukrainian agency comes from. And this is what vexes those who perceive a strong and independent Ukraine as a thorn in their side. Nothing in today's information environment should divert us from the path we have chosen. The same goes for those who eagerly began preparing for political games and illusionary elections. Under no circumstances should Ukrainians pay attention to them. All focus and strength must go to the front line. Desperation arises when circumstances force people to stop fighting for their cause. But that is not about us. We hold our lines and we destroy the occupiers. The only proper response to that is Slava Ukraini. And I read you this because there is right now a lot of speculation and a lot of things that Donald Trump says and Donald Trump does and Europe says and what Europe does. And I made a clear post yesterday in this channel's post section how I will be covering the news from now on. You can read it if you want to pause the video here, but I'm just going to move on. Because the core point of what I read you so far is that looking at the media space right now, looking at what are the reactions to a lot of the statements, is that it feels that even in 3 years, a lot of the Western powers and a lot of people and politicians completely fail to understand Ukraine. They fail to understand that Ukrainians have the agency. They have self-actualized agency. And people discard Zelensky, that potentially he will be forced to accept some kind of bad deal, that potentially he will be forced to sell out Ukrainian resources. That is not the case. What I want you to understand, and this is going to be kind of first step from detaching ourselves from the general media narratives that are floating around the space right now, is that Ukraine will never surrender. Ukraine is on a path to establishing their agency. They're on the path to establishing their country. Nothing can divert them from it. It has always been the case that Ukrainians have chosen to fight the Russians, and then us Europeans and Americans kind of just tagged along and started supporting Ukrainian efforts. We didn't go always full in. We didn't always go as much as Ukraine needed, but that is what Ukraine got and that is what they fought with. If at some point, for example, Ukraine will not receive as much weapons from the United States and maybe receive a little bit more from the European Union, then Ukraine will fight with what it has. It's not going to be an easy fight. There is going to be a lot more pain in the Ukrainian society. There's going to be a lot more unnecessary suffering. But Ukrainians have chosen their path. And right now, this message is thoroughly lacking in a lot of public spaces narratives. And the second part, what I also feel that a lot of people did not understand over 3 years, is that Russia is not interested in peace. Russia is interested in Russian agenda. They're interested into entering negotiations to start exerting pressure on Ukraine, to start diluting the picture, what is exactly happening right now. But Putin does not negotiate in good faith, and Putin is not looking to end this war fairly. And Ukrainians know that. So if you look at the point number one that I made and understand that if Putin doesn't want peace, honestly, and Ukrainians will never accept bad peace, then you will clearly understand that there is no way to pressure Ukraine into a bad peace deal. And if you're thinking, yes, but there are like politicians that strongly believe that it is possible maybe to find some kind of way with Putin, maybe sell out or do something like this, I want to show you a video of a politician that was a young and naive politician that thought that it is possible to negotiate with Putin. But at some point, that politician might have found out something and ended up on a completely different path. So let's listen to this.
If we talk about a ceasefire, we will not talk in the Minsk format, right? Not at meetings of the trilateral group, but we will look eye to eye with the president of the Russian Federation. And the meeting is already a victory. We unblocked, as you said, 3 years, since 2016, there has not been a dialogue. And that means there was no opportunity to even talk about ending the war. I want to see a person, and I want to bring from Normandy the understanding and feeling that everyone truly wants to gradually end this tragic war. I can definitely understand this at the table.
Zelensky came to power by promoting negotiated agreement with Putin to find out the common sense agreement with the Russian dictator to end the war. That wasn't in such a hot phase. He was truly willing to get some kind of conversation, but it never ended up well for him. And at some point, it became absolutely clear for this young politician that there is absolutely no interest of Russia beyond Russia. That whatever you think there could be some kind of bilateral agreements, it's all complete nonsense. And in the same way that this young politician understood that this is the way to go, I truly believe that at some point we will see the other politicians understand that this is the way to go as well. So when I see messages like these from the Finnish MP that United States has asked how Europeans would like to see Ukrainian capitulation, I'm smirking a little bit on the side. I obviously take it seriously, right? Because we live in a difficult world, as I said from the beginning. But I do smirk a little bit because I do know that Ukraine will not surrender and that United States will be hit by the reality that all of these weird efforts of surrendering for the Europeans and the Ukrainians are just going to go in vain. And Ukrainians are very rational. We already talked about the fact that Zelensky looked at the proposed mineral deal and he hit it back to Trump. There has been a bit of bickering, telling that Zelensky is not such a good president, but now already there is an improved agreement that is coming back to Zelensky to sign. I think there's going to be maybe a little bit improved, but I'm expecting it to go bounce a couple of more times before the agreement is going to be actually signed. Ukraine knows its agency. Ukraine realized that they're not a pawn in some kind of game, and they understand full well that if they want respect, they need to put themselves in a position to be treated with respect. So that means no begging to tyrants, no bowing down to anyone that tries to impose their force on top of you. And Ukrainians, the people, the culture of the country is very precise on that, is that no one, absolutely no one, will dictate how we live. And that is exactly why, with response to the Trump's comments that Zelensky has low popularity in Ukraine, all across Ukraine, from across the political spectrum, even the people that despised Zelensky, people that said like, man, this guy needs to go, we need to have someone else in charge, someone more competent, when these comments came out, then suddenly everyone said, you know, Zelensky may be a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch. And we're gonna be goddamned if we allow anyone to pressure us and dictate to us, Ukrainians, who should be in charge and how we should run our country. Ukrainians are free. They're free in their mind and they're free in their spirit. There might not be the most efficient way to run a country as the way that Ukrainians are doing, by devolving in different directions, sometimes appealing to populists, sometimes going for revolutions. But what they do have is agency. Do not lose trust in Ukrainians. Do not despair. Believe in Ukraine. They know how to end this war, and that is to kick some Russian butt. And if you want to hear weirdly positive news, then Trump actually has been incredibly consistent. Consistent in that his actions and pushes to get something actually consistently pushed back against him in completely opposite way. So in the same way that there has been now discussion and requests, as we just discussed, by the member of a Finnish parliament with regards to how do you want Ukraine to surrender in Europe, Europeans are instead coming together. The intensity of discussion on what should be done in Europe is unprecedented, which again underscores to me just how bad Joe Biden did, because Europe could have done this before. It was just not motivated because we did escalation management. So while I give absolutely zero credit to Trump, because this is definitely not what he was doing, he's definitely not playing 5D chess. It's more like Trump is setting his own house on fire, and now the Europeans are looking at the burning house and think, well, maybe we should get some fire insurance. But in that aspect, I actually kind of applaud the incompetence of the Trump's team in how they're delivering the message, that they're reaching the absolutely opposite result. So Donald Tusk is now pushing, and this is important because Poland right now is heading one of the bodies of the European states. So they are actually trying to push for more financing for Ukraine from the frozen Russian assets. They're also trying to police the space near Russia and Ukraine. I really hope that they will also police the space in Ukraine. And more importantly, they finally are calling for more investments in EU defense, not just on the transnational level, but this is also Poland is a big driver for Central and Eastern Europe. Beyond that, Denmark, like my own country that I love so much, is doing an incredible job. Denmark basically came out with a statement that they're looking to increase their defense budget for, I believe, 3.2% by the next year, and overall towards the 5% limit, which is a significant increase. And moreover, they have been working hard, and this has been also a trend throughout Europe, is that the biggest barrier for Europeans actually is not just the money. Like, Europe can actually get the money that they need for defense quite fast. The problem of Europe, if you've interacted with anything, is the tempo. It is always slow. It is slow, mostly because of the big bureaucratic apparatus. Denmark is leading the way. They're stating, we're going to cut the bureaucracy because this is emergency. So they're basically ordering their defense sector to go buy, just Time to go. Time to go all in purchases for and investments into defense infrastructure. And similar voices are also coming from Germany. The outgoing Minister of Foreign Affairs, Annalena Baerbock, has been making some statements. Now, she has been very cautious because she is from the outgoing government, and Germany will have elections on the 23rd of February, and there will be new parliament with new government made, and they will decide finally. But she was clearly stating that we need to have significant investments in our defense in Europe, and that package needs to be basically the similar that we did when the coronavirus was here in Europe. And that package that we did was around 700 billion euros in Europe. So a lot of the media took her words and they kind of twisted and turned it, and it turned into that European Union is preparing 700 billion euro package for Ukraine. That is not what she meant. She was talking just about the fact that we need to invest into European defense industries. And she was talking about additional investments and common work. And she was talking about the scale of about 700 billion, but we don't have precise numbers. But in any case, even if we're talking about the ballpark of about 700 billions, like similar that we did with coronavirus, then think about it this way. Current EU defense spending is about 560 billion euros per year. So if we get, 600 billion extra, that is more than doubling the defense budget of European Union. That is massive, especially if we take it together with what was just discussed by Mette Frederiksen and focusing on cutting down the bureaucracy. That is a potential winner right over here. But what we actually can do, and it will cost us absolutely nothing, but it will definitely help Ukrainians because of all of this news pollution, is we can show the support there is for Ukraine publicly all across the world. I will leave you the link to this website of Ukrainian World Congress, and there is a list of activities that are happening in countries all across the world. So in the coming days, there will be a 3 years, not 4 years for everyone that watched my previous stream, but 3 years anniversary of the awful Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and there will be marches and demonstrations in support for Ukraine. Please find if there is one near you and come out and support the Ukrainians so they can see that there is still plenty of support for them and that we support the Ukrainians. And if you want to support Ukrainians with something more, there is always our fundraiser that is running. We are going down towards the finish. We are already less than 100,000 away to completing this goal. I want to say huge thanks to all of the 1,839 people that contributed to this campaign. Let's get it down, guys. Let's finish it off. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you next time.